The stars look different out here on the edge of human space. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the vast emptiness through the main view screen. His ship was huge, nearly a mile long and packed with the most advanced technology humanity had ever built. 800 crew members called this massive vessel home as they patrolled the frontier. Jake had been in space for 20 years. He started as a young officer fresh from the academy and worked his way up through the ranks. The Proxima Wars had taught him that space was dangerous, and peaceful moments like this were rare and precious. He ran his hand through his graying hair and took a sip of coffee from his favorite mug. "Captain, we have something on long-range sensors," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a sharp woman who never missed anything important. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she gathered more information. "What kind of something?" Jake asked, setting down his coffee. He walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds on the metal deck. Lisa frowned at her screens. 12 ships, sir. Unknown design. They're moving in formation about 2 million kilometers away and heading straight for us." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with an alien species was always dangerous. Humanity had only met 3 other intelligent species so far, and 2 of those meetings had ended in war. "Are they responding to our standard greeting signals?" "Negative, sir. I've been broadcasting on all frequencies for the past 5 minutes. They're not answering, but they're not running away either." Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner looked up from his engineering station. He was a tall, thin man who knew every bolt and wire on the ship. "Captain, their engine signatures are unlike anything in our database. Whatever they are, they're using technology we've never seen before." Jake nodded and pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We have unknown vessels approaching our position. All crew to alert stations. This is not a drill." The ship's internal communication system carried his voice to every corner of the massive vessel. The bridge became busier as more officers arrived at their posts. Dr. Kate Williams, the ship's chief scientist, took her place at the science station. She was excited about the possibility of meeting a new species, but Jake knew she understood the dangers too. "Captain, the unknown vessels are slowing down," Lisa reported. "They're taking up what looks like an attack formation." Jake studied the tactical display. The alien ships were arranged in a pattern that screamed military aggression. They were trying to surround his ship, which meant they probably saw the Defiance as a threat or a target. "Open a communication channel," Jake ordered. "Let's see if we can talk to them." Lieutenant Sam Collins, the communications officer, worked at his station for a moment. "Channel open, sir." Jake stood up straight and spoke clearly. "Unknown vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship USS Defiance. We come in peace and request peaceful dialogue. Please respond." For several long minutes, there was only silence. The alien ships continued their approach, moving with purpose and precision. Jake could feel the tension on the bridge growing. Finally, the speakers crackled to life. The voice that came through was deep and harsh, speaking accented English. "Human vessel, you have entered Zephyrian space without permission. I am War Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective. You will surrender your ship immediately or be destroyed." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. The aliens had learned human languages, which meant they had been watching humanity for some time. That was both impressive and concerning. "War Admiral Kethvar, we were not aware this was claimed space. We have no hostile intentions. Perhaps we can discuss this situation and find a peaceful solution." There was a pause before the alien voice responded. "Humans are weak. Your words prove this. You have 1 minute to surrender, or we will take your ship by force and sell your crew as slaves." Dr. Williams shook her head. "Classic predator species. Behavior, Captain. They see courtesy as weakness. Jake had dealt with species like this before. The Zephyrians were clearly a warrior culture that respected only strength. Diplomacy would be difficult, but he had to try. War Admiral, we do not wish to fight, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Our ship carries peaceful explorers and scientists. Surely warriors as great as yourselves can find honor in protecting the innocent." The alien's laugh was cold and unpleasant. "You speak of honor while hiding behind your metal shell. Show us this honor, human. Come out and face us in personal combat." Lieutenant Commander Turner raised his eyebrows. "Sir, they really don't understand human technology, do they? They think we're hiding." Jake almost smiled. The Zephyrians had no idea what they were dealing with. The Defiance was not just a ship. It was a mobile fortress with enough firepower to level a continent. But these aliens saw it as a hiding place for cowards. "War Admiral, I offer you one more chance for peaceful dialogue. We have no quarrel with your people." "Time has expired, human. Prepare to die." The communication channel went dead. On the tactical display, the alien ships began moving into attack positions. Jake could see they were old-fashioned vessels, probably using chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. "Captain, they're charging what appear to be plasma weapons," Lisa reported. "The energy signatures are impressive for their tech level, but nothing compared to our defensive systems." Jake sat back down in his captain's chair. He had tried diplomacy and been rejected. Now he had to protect his ship and crew, raise shields and prepare for combat. Set condition red throughout the ship. Red lights began flashing on the bridge as the ship's battle systems came online. The Defiance transformed from a peaceful explorer into an instrument of war in seconds. "Sir, are we really going to fight 12 ships?" asked Dr. Williams. Jake looked at the tactical display again. The Zephyrian vessels were impressive for their level of technology, but they were like swords trying to fight a tank. "We're going to defend ourselves, Doctor, and I have a feeling these aliens are about to learn something they won't like." The alien ships finished their approach and hung in space around the Defiance, like hungry wolves surrounding a lone traveler. But they had made a serious mistake. The traveler they thought was helpless was actually the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. War Admiral Kethvar had just made the worst decision of his life. War Admiral Kethvar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crimson Talon. He was a massive creature, nearly 8 feet tall with thick purple skin and 4 powerful arms. Scars covered his body from 100 battles, each one a mark of honor in Zephyrian culture. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with military precision. The human ship hung in space before them like a giant metal fish. Kethvar had conquered 17 different species in his long career, and he knew the look of a defeated enemy. This vessel was alone, outnumbered 12 to 1, and its captain spoke like a frightened child begging for mercy. "Science officer. Veltar, I want a complete scan of that human ship," Kethvar commanded. His voice echoed through the bridge like thunder. "I want to know their weapons, their defenses, and how many crew members we will be selling at the slave markets." Veltar was smaller than the War Admiral, with pale blue skin and 6 thin arms that moved like spider legs across his control panels. He was the smartest Zephyrian on the ship, which made him valuable despite his weakness in combat. "Yes, War Admiral. Beginning deep tactical scan now." Veltar's 6 hands worked frantically at his station. "This will take several minutes to penetrate their hull and analyze their internal systems." Kethvar nodded and turned to his weapons officer. "Commander Zaxxon, Prepare all plasma cannons for full assault. Once we understand their capabilities, we will destroy their engines and capture the ship. Human slaves will bring good prices on Korath Station. The Zephyrian fleet had been patrolling this sector for 6 months, looking for new species to conquer or valuable resources to steal. Finding this lone human vessel was like discovering a treasure chest floating in space. The humans were obviously new to space travel, judging by their crude attempts at diplomacy. On the USS Defiance, Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner watched his monitors with interest. The alien scanning beams were primitive but persistent, like someone trying to open a locked door with a bent wire. "Captain, the aliens are running a full tactical scan on us," Turner reported. "Their technology is about 200 years behind ours, but they're being very thorough." Captain Morrison looked at his chief engineer with curiosity. "Are they getting through our security systems?" Turner smiled. "Sir, their scanners can't even detect our security systems. It's like watching a caveman try to understand a computer. But I can monitor everything they're doing." Dr. Kate Williams looked up from her science station. "Captain, this is fascinating. Their scanning technology uses focused tachyon beams modulated through crystalline matrices. It's actually quite clever for their level of development." "Can we block their scans?" Morrison asked. "We could, sir," Turner replied. "But honestly, it might be educational to let them see what they're dealing with. Our passive defenses will prevent them from accessing anything important. But they'll get basic information about our hull composition and power systems." Morrison thought for a moment. Sometimes the best way to avoid a fight was to let your enemy understand how badly they would lose. Let them scan, but monitor everything they're doing. Back on the Crimson Talon, Veltar was starting to get confused. His scanners were returning data that didn't make sense. According to his instruments, the human ship's hull was made of materials that shouldn't exist. "War Admiral, I'm getting some unusual readings," Veltar said carefully. He didn't want to anger his commander with bad news, but the data was impossible to ignore. "What kind of unusual readings?" Kethvar demanded. Veltar's 6 hands moved nervously across his controls. "Sir, their hull appears to be constructed from some kind of nano-enhanced carbon composite. The density readings suggest it's at least 50 times stronger than our best battle steel." Kethvar's 4 eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. Check your equipment." "I've run diagnostics 3 times, sir. The readings are accurate." Veltar paused, then continued with growing concern. "Sir, I'm also detecting their power systems. The energy output from their reactor is significant." "How significant?" Veltar looked at his readings again, hoping he was wrong. "Sir, their reactor appears to be generating more power than our entire fleet combined." The War Admiral's scarred face twisted with anger. "You incompetent fool! Your scanners are malfunctioning. A single ship cannot have more power than 12. Zephyrian warships! War Admiral, please look at these readings," Veltar said desperately. He transferred the data to Kethvar's personal display. "I've checked everything multiple times. Their reactor is some kind of antimatter system I've never seen before." Kethvar stared at the data, his 4 arms clenching into fists. The numbers on the screen showed impossible things. According to these scans, the human ship was not just stronger than his fleet. It was stronger than anything in Zephyrian space. "Continue the scan," he ordered through gritted teeth. "I want to know about their weapons." Veltar worked frantically at his station, sweat beading on his blue skin. As more data came in, his concern grew into genuine fear. The human ship's weapon systems were unlike anything in the Zephyrian database. Sir, I'm detecting at least 47. Different weapon systems, Veltar reported with a shaking voice. Particle beam arrays, fusion torpedoes, plasma lance batteries, and something called a gravity disruptor that I don't understand at all. What's the total firepower rating? Kethvar asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, according to these scans, that single human ship has enough firepower to destroy our entire home fleet. All 300 ships. The bridge of the Crimson Talon fell silent. Every Zephyrian crew member had heard Veltar's report, and they all understood what it meant. They had not found helpless prey floating in space. They had found an apex predator that could kill them all without breaking a sweat. Kethvar stood, frozen, staring at the data on his screen. In 60 years of military service, he had never encountered a situation like this. His warrior's instincts told him to attack, but his survival instincts were screaming warnings. "Are you certain about these readings?" he asked one final time. Veltar nodded miserably. "Yes, War Admiral. I stake my life on their accuracy." Kethvar looked out at the human ship, which suddenly seemed much larger and more threatening than before. He had made his career by being smarter than his enemies, not just stronger. And right now, his intelligence was telling him that he had made a terrible mistake. The human captain's offer of peaceful dialogue was starting to sound much more appealing. Veltar stared at his scanning equipment in disbelief. He had been a science officer for 30 years and had analyzed thousands of ships from dozens of different species. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he was seeing now. "Run, the diagnostics again," he muttered to himself, his 6 thin arms working frantically across the control panels. The same impossible readings appeared on his screen. The human ship's technology was so advanced that his scanners could barely understand what they were looking at. The hull material readings alone were giving him nightmares. The humans had somehow created a substance that was lighter than aluminum but stronger than diamond. The molecular structure showed layers of carbon nanotubes woven together in patterns that defied everything he knew about materials science. "This is impossible," Veltar whispered. "How did they solve the binding energy problem?" War Admiral Kethvar noticed his science officer's distress and stomped over to the scanning station. His heavy footsteps made the deck plates vibrate. "What are you mumbling about now?" "Sir, their hull material shouldn't exist. According to our physics, you can't create carbon structures this strong without them collapsing under their own molecular." "Wait." Veltar's voice was filled with scientific confusion and growing fear. Kethvar looked at the data, but most of it was beyond his understanding. He was a warrior, not a scientist. "Explain it in simple terms." "Imagine trying to build a sword from spider silk, sir. It should be impossible, but somehow they've done it. Their entire ship is made from materials that our best engineers said could never exist." The War Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "What about their weapons? Those I can understand." Veltar switched to the weapons analysis screen, and his blue skin turned even paler. "Sir, this is worse than the hull readings. Their main gun array uses focused antimatter streams guided by gravitational field manipulation. I've never even heard of technology like this." "How much damage could those weapons do?" Kethvar asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Veltar did some quick calculations on his computer. His hands were shaking now. "Sir, their smallest weapon system could punch a hole through our flagship's armor like it was made of paper. Their main guns—" He paused, checking. His math 3 times. Their main guns could destroy an entire moon. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of machinery. Every Zephyrian present understood the implications. They weren't just outgunned. They were completely helpless. On the USS Defiance, Dr. Kate Williams was watching the alien scanning attempts with scientific fascination. She had specialized in xenotechnology for 15 years and loved studying how different species solved technical problems. "Captain, their scanning technique is actually quite ingenious," she reported. "They're using modulated tachyon pulses to map our internal structure. It's primitive compared to our methods, but very creative." Captain Morrison looked over at her station. "Are they learning anything useful?" "Oh, yes, sir. They're getting detailed information about our hull composition, power systems, and weapons arrays. Based on their scanning patterns, I'd say they're conducting a standard threat assessment." Lieutenant Commander Turner grinned from his engineering station. "I almost feel sorry for them. It's like watching someone try to measure an ocean with a teaspoon." "How long before they realize what they're dealing with?" Morrison asked. Dr. Williams studied the alien scanning patterns. "Based on their methodology, I'd estimate they already have enough data to understand our basic capabilities. The question is whether they'll believe their own sensors." Back on the Crimson Talon, War Admiral Kethvar was facing the worst crisis of his military career. The scan results showed that his entire fleet was outclassed by a single human vessel. But accepting that conclusion meant admitting that everything he knew about galactic military power was wrong. "Science Officer Veltar, I want you to scan their ship again. Focus on their crew areas. How many humans are aboard?" Veltar's hands moved across his controls with practiced efficiency. "Sir, I'm reading approximately 800 life signs. The ship appears to be operating at full crew capacity." 800, Kethvar repeated thoughtfully. "That's fewer people than we have on just my flagship. How can so few beings operate such an advanced vessel?" "Sir, their automation systems are beyond anything in our database. Most of their ship appears to be controlled by artificial intelligence networks. Their crew is probably just there for decision-making and maintenance." Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. Artificial intelligence was dangerous technology that most species avoided. The humans were apparently using it as casually as the Zephyrians used basic computers. "What about their defensive systems?" he asked, desperately, hoping to find some weakness. Veltar worked at his station for several minutes before responding. "Sir, I can detect 17 different types of defensive shields, including some that use technologies I can't identify. Their shield strength appears to be substantial." "How substantial?" "Sir, our plasma cannons might not even register as hits against their shields. It would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain." Sub-Admiral Thexalon, Kethvar's second-in-command, had been listening to the conversation with growing alarm. He was a practical warrior who understood when a battle could not be won. "War Admiral," Thexalon said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach to these humans. If the scan results are accurate, engaging them in combat would be suicide." Kethvar turned his 4 eyes toward his subordinate. In Zephyrian culture, suggesting retreat was close to treason, but Thexalon was also his oldest friend and most trusted advisor. "Are you suggesting we run from a single ship?" Kethvar asked dangerously. "Sir, I'm suggesting we avoid unnecessary destruction of our fleet. These humans have technology we don't. Understand? Maybe we should try to learn from them instead of fighting them." Veltar looked up from his scanning station with obvious relief. "Sir, if I may add something, the human ship is clearly designed for exploration as well as combat. They have extensive scientific laboratories and research facilities. They might be more interested in knowledge than conquest. Kethavar stared out at the human vessel, trying to process everything he had learned. His entire worldview was crumbling. The Zephyrian collective had dominated this region of space for centuries, by being the strongest force around. Now they had encountered something far beyond their capabilities. "Continue monitoring their ship," he ordered finally, "but do not initiate any hostile actions until I give the command." The War Admiral had built his reputation on never backing down from a fight, but he had also survived 60 years of combat by knowing when he was beaten. The question now was whether his warrior's pride would let him admit the truth. Captain Jake Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. He had hoped this first contact would go smoothly, but the alien War Admiral seemed determined to fight. Jake understood warrior cultures. He had dealt with the Altarian Empire during the Proxima Wars. Sometimes you had to speak their language before they would listen to reason. "Commander Hayes, what's our tactical situation?" he asked his weapons officer. Lisa Hayes studied her displays with professional calm. She had served under Morrison for 8 years and trusted his judgment completely. "Sir, the alien fleet is maintaining attack formation at 200,000 kilometers. 12 vessels total, all armed with plasma-based weapons and basic missile systems. Threat assessment? Minimal, sir. Their technology appears to be early fusion age level. Our point defense systems could handle their entire fleet without assistance from our main weapons." Jake nodded. The Defiance had been built to face much more dangerous enemies than these Zephyrians. During the Proxima Wars, humanity had learned to build ships that could survive anything the galaxy could throw at them. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Sam Collins from the communications station, "I'm picking up increased chatter from the alien fleet. They seem to be having some kind of discussion about their scan results." Dr. Kate Williams looked up from her science station with interest. "Captain, I'm monitoring their scanning attempts. Based on the data they're gathering, they should be realizing about now that we're not as helpless as they assumed." Jake almost smiled. How long before they understand what they're really dealing with? Based on their technology level and scanning efficiency, I'd say they already know they're outclassed. The question is whether their pride will let them accept it. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner raised his hand from the engineering station. "Captain, their scanning attempts are becoming more focused. They're specifically examining our reactor core and main weapon systems now." "Are they getting through our security protocols?" "No, sir, but they're getting enough general information to understand our capabilities. It's like letting someone look at the outside of a tank. They can't see how it works, but they can tell it's dangerous." Jake made his decision. These aliens needed to understand the situation before they did something stupid that got their crews killed. "Mr. Collins, open a communication channel to the alien flagship." "Channel open, sir." Jake stood up and spoke in his most diplomatic voice. "War Admiral Kethavar, I hope your scans have given you a better understanding of our vessel. We remain committed to peaceful dialogue." There was a long pause before the alien voice responded. When Kethavar spoke, his tone was noticeably less aggressive than before. "Human Captain, your ship is not what we expected. We are explorers and scientists, War Admiral. Our ship is designed for long-range missions in dangerous space. We have no hostile intentions toward your people." Another pause. Jake could almost hear the internal debate happening on the alien bridge. Warrior cultures hated admitting weakness, but they also respected strength when they encountered it. "Captain Morrison," Kethavar said finally, "my science officer reports that your vessel possesses considerable defensive capabilities. Jake chose his words carefully. Our ship is well defended, yes, but we prefer to use our capabilities to protect others, not to conquer them. On the Crimson Talon, War Admiral Kethvar was facing the most difficult decision of his military career. The human captain's words were respectful but carried an unmistakable message. We could destroy you, but we choose not to. Sub-Admiral Thexelon moved closer to his commander. Sir, perhaps we should test their intentions with a warning shot. In our culture, it would demonstrate resolve without committing to full combat. Kethvar considered the suggestion. A warning shot was traditional among Zephyrian fleets, a way of showing determination while leaving room for the enemy to surrender. It would let him maintain face while giving the humans a chance to demonstrate their true capabilities. Weapons. Officer Zaxxon, Kethvar commanded. Prepare a plasma burst. Target the space in front of the human vessel. Fire across their bow as a warning. Zaxxon, a massive Zephyrian with arms like tree trunks, worked at his weapons console. Plasma cannons! Charging, War Admiral. Ready to fire on your command. Kethvar took a deep breath. This single decision would determine whether his fleet lived or died. Fire warning shot. A brilliant blue beam of plasma energy lanced out from the Crimson Talon's main guns. The bolt streaked across space and passed just in front of the human. Ship's bow close enough to show serious intent, but far enough away to avoid direct impact. On the USS Defiance, the crew watched the plasma bolt flash past their view screen. Commander Hayes immediately analyzed the shot's power and trajectory. Warning shot, sir, she reported calmly. Low-level plasma burst, deliberately aimed to miss. Standard aggressive posturing among warrior cultures. Jake understood the gesture. The aliens were testing him, trying to see how he would respond to a show of force. His response would determine whether this situation escalated into violence or moved toward resolution. Commander Foster, Jake said to his weapons officer, prepare to return fire. I want a proportional response, something that will get their attention without destroying their ship. Commander Ryan Foster was a quiet man who had served on the Defiance since its launch. He understood the delicate balance between showing strength and avoiding unnecessary killing. Sir, recommend a focused particle beam at minimal power. Should penetrate their shields and disable some systems without causing major casualties. Target their flagship's forward section. Fire when ready. Foster's fingers moved across his weapons console with practiced efficiency. Particle beam armed and targeted, sir. Firing now. A thin lance of brilliant white energy reached out from the Defiance toward the Crimson Talon. To Foster, it was barely a tap, the weapon operating at less than 2% of its maximum power. To the Zephyrians, it was about to become the most devastating thing they had ever experienced. The particle beam struck the Crimson Talon's forward shields with surgical precision. The alien defensive systems, designed to handle plasma weapons and kinetic projectiles, had no defense against focused antimatter particles traveling at near-light speed. The shields collapsed instantly. The beam punched through the ship's outer, armor plating like it was made of paper, penetrated 3 decks, and finally dispersed in the engineering section after destroying several secondary systems. On the Crimson Talon's bridge, emergency alarms began wailing. Damage reports flooded in from all over the ship. The single gentle shot from the human vessel had crippled War Admiral Kethvar's flagship. Damage report. Kethvar roared over the noise of sirens and sparking electronics. Forward shields are down, reported the damage control officer. Hull breaches on decks 7, 8, and 9. Engineering reports secondary power grid failures throughout the ship. Kethvar stared at the human vessel in shock. Their proportional response had nearly destroyed his most powerful warship. What would happen if they decided to use their main weapons? The War Admiral finally understood what his science officer had been trying to tell him. The humans weren't just more advanced, they were so far beyond Zephyrian technology that this wasn't even a fair fight. The bridge of the Crimson Talon had become chaos. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow, while damage control teams rushed through the corridors. The smell of burned electronics and venting atmosphere filled the air. War Admiral Kethvar stood, amid the destruction, trying to understand how a single shot had nearly destroyed his flagship. "Engineering report," he demanded, his four arms gripping the command rail. Chief Engineer Mordak's voice came through the communication system, filled with panic. "War Admiral, we have massive system failures throughout the ship. The human weapon punched through our hull like it was empty space. Whatever they hit us with, it's destroyed half our secondary power grid." Kethvar looked at the tactical display, which showed his mighty flagship listing to one side with dozens of hull breaches. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep basic systems operational. The most feared warship in the Zephyrian fleet had been crippled by what the humans probably considered a gentle warning. "Science Officer Veltar," Kethvar called out. "Analyze that weapon strike. What kind of technology are we dealing with?" Veltar's 6 hands were shaking as he worked at his station. "Sir, initial analysis suggests they used some kind of focused antimatter beam. The energy density was incredible, far beyond anything in our weapons database." "How far beyond?" Veltar swallowed hard. "Sir, that single shot carried more destructive energy than our entire main gun array firing at full power. The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. The humans had just demonstrated that they could destroy his ship anytime they wanted. The fact that his flagship was still intact meant they were showing mercy. On the other Zephyrian vessels, the crews watched their flagships damage with growing horror. Captain Hexroll of the battlecruiser Void Stalker opened a communication channel to the rest of the fleet. "All ships, this is Hexroll. The flagship has been severely damaged by a single human weapon. I recommend immediate withdrawal." Similar messages flooded the fleet communication network. Veteran Zephyrian warriors who had conquered dozens of species were calling for retreat after witnessing one demonstration of human firepower. On the USS Defiance, Commander Ryan Foster was already preparing for the aliens' likely response. He had served in enough battles to know that desperate enemies sometimes made desperate choices. "Captain, the alien fleet is showing signs of panic," Foster reported. "Several ships are powering up their engines like they're preparing to run." "Captain." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian formation was falling apart as individual ships reacted to their flagship's damage. "Any signs they're preparing to attack?" "Negative, sir. If anything, they seem to be trying to put distance between themselves and us." Dr. Kate Williams looked up from her science station with concern. "Captain, I'm detecting elevated stress. Hormones in the alien communications. Their biochemistry suggests they're experiencing extreme fear." Jake nodded. He had seen this reaction before during the Proxima Wars. When a warrior culture encountered something completely beyond their understanding, they often panicked. The key was to give them a way to retreat with some dignity intact. "Mr. Collins, open a channel to the alien flagship." "Channel open, sir," Jake spoke in his calmest, most reassuring voice. "War Admiral Kethvar, I hope there were no serious casualties from our defensive response. We can provide medical assistance if needed." The communication channel remained silent for nearly a minute. When HFY finally responded, his voice was strained with pain and confusion. Captain Morrison, your defensive response has severely damaged my flagship. Is this how humans demonstrate peaceful intentions? Jake chose his words carefully. War Admiral, you fired upon our vessel first. Our response was measured and proportional. In human culture, when someone shoots at us, we shoot back. But we targeted your systems, not your crew areas. Dr. Kate Williams quickly analyzed the damage patterns on the alien ship. Captain, our weapon strike was incredibly precise. They have significant system damage but minimal casualties. Commander Foster's targeting was perfect. Jake felt a bit of relief. The last thing he wanted was to start an interstellar war over a misunderstanding. War Admiral, our medical officer can provide assistance to your wounded. We have advanced healing technologies that might help your crew. On the Crimson Talon, HFY was struggling with concepts that didn't exist in Zephyrian military doctrine. The humans had demonstrated the ability to destroy his entire fleet, but instead of pressing their advantage, they were offering medical aid to their enemies. Sub-Admiral Thexlon, HFY said quietly. What do you make of this human behavior? Thexlon had been studying the humans' actions since the encounter began. Sir, they appear to follow a warrior code similar to our own, but with different priorities. They value mercy toward defeated enemies. Mercy is weakness, HFY said, automatically reciting Zephyrian military doctrine. Is it, sir? They have shown they can destroy us any time they choose. Offering mercy from a position of absolute strength might actually be the ultimate demonstration of power. HFY had never considered that perspective before. In Zephyrian culture, you showed mercy only when you were too weak to finish your enemies. But these humans were showing mercy because they were strong enough to choose their actions freely. Dr. John Miller, the Defiance's chief medical officer, was already preparing to help the alien casualties. He had studied Zephyrian physiology from their databases and understood their basic biology. Captain, I can beam medical supplies and treatment protocols directly to their medical bay, Miller reported. Their wounded are suffering from plasma burns and decompression injuries. Nothing we can't help with. Jake made his decision. Do it, Doctor. Send whatever aid they need. Within minutes, medical supplies began materializing on the Crimson Talon. The Zephyrian medical staff stared in amazement as advanced human healing devices appeared in their treatment rooms, along with detailed instructions in their own language. War Admiral HFY watched his medical teams using human technology to save Zephyrian lives. The healing devices worked faster and more effectively than anything in their medical arsenal. Burns that would have taken weeks to heal were closing in minutes. Sir, reported his medical officer, the human healing technology is extraordinary. We could save warriors who would otherwise die from their injuries. HFY realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in his military experience. The humans had demonstrated superior firepower, then immediately offered aid to help their enemies recover from the damage. It was like being struck by lightning, then having the storm itself offer shelter from the rain. Science Officer Veltar, HFY said slowly, send a message to High Command. Tell them we have encountered a species with technology far beyond our own, but who appear to value life over conquest. Veltar's 6 hands worked at his communication station. What should I recommend for our response, sir? HFY stared out at the human ship, which could have destroyed his entire fleet, but chose instead to offer medical aid. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact. These humans are not like any enemy we have faced before. The War Admiral was beginning to understand that he had not found prey to hunt. He had found teachers who might show the Zephyrian collective a different way to use their strength. The Zephyrian High Command Center on the homeworld of Keth Prime was a massive structure built from black stone and steel. Inside the war room, Fleet Admiral Vorthak studied the reports coming in from War Admiral Kethvar's expedition with growing disbelief. "Read that message again," Vorthak commanded his aide, a young officer named Lixtar. Lixtar's voice shook as he read from the communication display. "High Command, we have encountered human vessels with technology far exceeding our capabilities. Request immediate diplomatic contact protocols. Do not engage human forces with military action. Repeat, do not engage." Vorthak was a massive Zephyrian, even by their standards. His purple skin was covered with ritual scars from 100 victories, and his 4 arms could crush steel. He had built his career on the principle that overwhelming force solved every problem. "This makes no sense," Vorthak growled. "Kethvar commands 12 of our finest warships. How can one alien vessel threaten our entire expedition?" Defense Minister Kex Ara, an elderly female Zephyrian with silver skin, studied the technical data from Veltar's scans. "Admiral, if these readings are accurate, the human ship possesses technology centuries ahead of our own. Their weapons could destroy our entire home fleet." "Impossible," Vorthak declared. "No single species could advance that far beyond the rest of the galaxy. Our intelligence networks would have detected such development." Kexara pulled up additional data on her personal display. "Admiral, consider this. We have no previous contact with humans. They appeared in our space suddenly with no warning from our scouts. That suggests they have transportation technology we cannot detect." The Fleet Admiral studied the reports more carefully. According to Veltar's analysis, the human ship used antimatter reactors, gravity manipulation, and materials that shouldn't exist according to Zephyrian physics. If even half of it was true, the humans represented a threat unlike anything the collective had ever faced. Meanwhile, on the USS Defiance, Captain Morrison was dealing with his own command decisions. The alien fleet was clearly in distress, but they were also obviously military vessels in hostile territory. "Commander Hayes, what's the status of the alien fleet?" Morrison asked. Lisa Hayes studied her tactical displays. "Sir, 11 ships are maintaining defensive positions around their damaged flagship. They're not showing any signs of aggression, but they're also not withdrawing from our space." Lieutenant Commander Turner looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, I'm monitoring their repair efforts. They're trying to fix their flagship, but their technology is so primitive compared to ours that it's going to take them days." Dr. Williams had been studying the aliens' behavior patterns since the engagement began. "Captain, based on their communications and actions, I believe they're facing a cultural crisis. Their entire worldview is based on military superiority, and we've just proven they're not the strongest force in the galaxy." Morrison understood the implications. When warrior cultures faced superior enemies, they either adapted or were destroyed. The question was whether these Zephyrians were smart enough to choose adaptation. "Dr. Miller, how are the medical supplies? Working for their casualties?" Dr. John Miller smiled from his medical station. "Extremely well, sir. Their wounded are recovering much faster than their own medical technology could achieve. I think we're making a positive impression." On the Crimson Talon, War Admiral Kethvar was experiencing something he had never felt before in 60 years of military service: genuine respect for an enemy's mercy. The human medical devices had saved the lives of 17 Zephyrian warriors who would have died from their injuries. "Sub-Admiral Thexalon," Kethvar said, "draft a formal communication to the human captain. I want to request a face-to-face meeting. Thexelon's 4 eyes widened in surprise. Sir, that goes against all our first contact protocols. We don't meet with unknown species until we understand their full capabilities. We understand their capabilities, Kethvar replied grimly. They can destroy us whenever they choose. The question is whether they're willing to talk instead of fight. Science Officer Veltar had been monitoring human communications during the crisis. War Admiral, I've been analyzing their internal transmissions. The humans appear to be genuinely committed to peaceful contact. Their captain has been restraining his crew from taking more aggressive action. What do you mean? Sir, several times during our encounter, human crew members suggested more forceful responses to our actions. Their captain consistently chose the least violent option available. Kethvar found this information fascinating. The humans had the power to annihilate his fleet, but their leader was actively choosing restraint. It suggested a level of discipline and wisdom that impressed the old warrior. Send the communication request, Kethvar decided. But include an offer of formal surrender if they prefer. I will not sacrifice my crews for the sake of pride. The message reached the USS Defiance within minutes. Lieutenant Collins read it aloud to the bridge crew. Captain Morrison, War Admiral. Kethvar requests permission to board your vessel for face-to-face negotiations. He offers formal surrender of his fleet if you prefer that option instead. Morrison was surprised by the aliens' directness. Most species tried to negotiate from positions of strength, even when they were clearly defeated. These Zephyrians seemed to understand their situation with brutal honesty. What do you think, people? Morrison asked his senior staff. Are they sincere, or is this some kind of trap? Dr. Williams spoke first. Captain, based on their behavior patterns, I believe they're sincere. Their culture values honesty in military matters, even when it's painful, Commander Hayes added. Her tactical assessment. Sir, even if it's a trap, they don't have any weapons that could threaten us. Their most powerful ship is barely functional right now. Lieutenant Commander Turner nodded agreement. Captain, we could scan their shuttle for weapons and explosives. With our technology, we'd detect any threat long before it became dangerous. Morrison made his decision. Mr. Collins, send a reply to the War Admiral. Tell him I'll be honored to meet with him aboard the Defiance. 1 shuttle, maximum of 4 occupants, and they'll submit to a complete security scan before boarding. As the message was transmitted to the Zephyrian fleet, Morrison realized he was about to make history. This would be humanity's first formal, diplomatic contact with a warrior species that had willingly acknowledged human superiority. The question was whether this meeting would lead to friendship or merely delay an inevitable war. But Morrison had learned during the Proxima Wars that sometimes the best way to avoid conflict was to demonstrate overwhelming strength coupled with genuine desire for peace. War Admiral Kethvar was about to learn whether humans could be trusted, with the kind of power they possessed. For the sake of both species, Morrison hoped the answer was yes. The shuttle bay of the USS Defiance was a massive space that could hold dozens of smaller vessels. Captain Morrison stood near the main landing platform with his senior staff, watching as the Zephyrian shuttle approached. The alien craft was crude compared to human technology, but it showed impressive engineering for its tech level. Security scan complete, sir, reported Chief Security Officer Nina Walsh. 4 life forms aboard, no weapons detected, no explosive materials. The shuttle itself is powered by basic fusion engines. No threat to our ship. Morrison nodded as the alien vessel settled onto the landing deck with a heavy thud. The Zephyrians clearly built their ships for durability rather than elegance. Steam hissed from the shuttle's engines as they powered down. Dr. Williams stood beside the captain, her scientific equipment ready to record this historic first meeting. "Captain, their shuttle design tells us a lot about their culture. Heavy armor, redundant systems, built to survive damage rather than avoid it. Definitely a warrior society." The shuttle's main hatch opened with a grinding sound of metal on metal. War Admiral Kethvar emerged first, and the humans got their first close look at a Zephyrian. He was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall and massively built, with thick purple skin and 4 powerful arms. Ritual scars covered his visible body like a map of past battles. Behind him came Sub-Admiral Thexlon, slightly smaller but equally impressive. Science Officer Veltar followed, his blue skin and thinner build marking him as a different caste within Zephyrian society. The fourth member was a female officer with silver-streaked skin, whom Morrison assumed was their diplomatic specialist. "Welcome aboard the USS Defiance," Morrison said, stepping forward with his hand extended in the human gesture of greeting. "I am Captain Jake Morrison." Kethvar studied the extended hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his 4 arms to clasp it. His grip was firm but controlled. Clearly he understood the importance of not accidentally crushing human bones. "I am War Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective," the alien replied in accented but clear English. "I thank you for agreeing to this meeting, despite our earlier misunderstanding." Morrison smiled. "Misunderstandings happen during first contact, War Admiral. Please let me introduce my senior staff." The introductions proceeded formally, with each side sizing up the other. The Zephyrians were clearly impressed by the ship's technology. The shuttle bay alone was larger and more advanced than most of their vessels. "War Admiral," Morrison said once the formalities were complete, "would you and your officers like a tour of our ship? I think it might help you understand our capabilities and intentions." Kethvar's 4 eyes studied the human captain carefully. "Captain Morrison, before we proceed, I must be honest with you. My science officer's scans indicate that your vessel could destroy my entire fleet. Is this accurate?" Morrison appreciated the alien's directness. "Yes, War Admiral, it is, but destruction is not our goal. We're explorers, not conquerors." "Then why do you carry such powerful weapons?" Dr. Williams stepped forward. "War Admiral, may I answer that? Space is dangerous. We've encountered hostile species before. Pirates, slavers, empires that view other races as resources to be exploited. Our weapons exist to protect ourselves and others who cannot protect themselves." Veltar spoke for the first time since boarding. "Captain Morrison, our scans suggest your technology is centuries ahead of ours. How did your species advance so quickly?" Lieutenant Commander Turner answered that question. "We had to, Science Officer. My species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We faced extinction several times in our history, and each crisis forced us to innovate or die." "Extinction?" Thexlon asked with obvious concern. Morrison nodded grimly. "Wars, plagues, environmental disasters, hostile aliens. Humanity has survived by learning to adapt quickly and work together when threatened." The group began walking through the ship's corridors, with the Zephyrians marveling at the advanced technology surrounding them. The walls seemed to glow with soft light, and the deck plates felt more solid than anything on their own vessels. "Your materials science is extraordinary," Veltar observed, running one of his 6 hands along a wall panel. "This feels stronger than our best armor plating, but it's light enough to use for interior construction." "Nanocarbon composites," Turner, explained. We learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level about 50 years ago. It revolutionized our construction techniques. They reached the ship's main computer core, a vast chamber filled with crystalline matrices that pulsed with light. The Zephyrians stared in amazement at technology that looked more like art than machinery. This is our primary artificial intelligence core, Dr. Williams explained. It helps us manage the ship's systems and process information faster than any biological mind could handle. Kethavar's scarred face showed concern. Artificial intelligence is dangerous. Many species have been destroyed by their own creations. We learned to build safeguards, Morrison replied. Our AI systems are designed to serve and protect, never to replace or control. It took us decades to get the programming right, but the effort was worth it. The tour continued through the medical bay, where Dr. Miller demonstrated some of the healing technologies they had shared with the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens watched in fascination as human medical scanners could diagnose and treat injuries that would be fatal with their own technology. Your medicine could save millions of lives, said Commander Nixera, the Zephyrian diplomatic officer, speaking for the first time. Do you share such knowledge freely? With peaceful species who won't use it to harm others, Miller replied. Medical knowledge should serve life, not enable conquest. Finally, they reached the ship's observation deck, a massive transparent dome that offered a clear view of space and both fleets. The Zephyrians could see their own vessels from this perspective, small, primitive-looking craft clustered around the wounded Crimson Talon. War Admiral, Morrison said quietly, I want you to understand something. We could have destroyed your fleet in the first minute of our encounter. We chose not to, because we believe in giving peaceful species a chance to prove their intentions. Kethavar stared out at his fleet, seeing it now through human eyes. Captain Morrison, what would you have done if we had continued attacking? Morrison's expression grew serious. We would have disabled your ships and captured your crews. Killing should be a last resort, used only when all other options fail. And if we had threatened innocent worlds, then we would have stopped you, War Admiral, permanently, if necessary. The brutal honesty of Morrison's answer impressed Kethavar more than any diplomatic platitude could have. These humans had the power of gods, but they used it with the restraint of philosophers. Captain Morrison, Kethavar said formally, I request permission to transmit a message to my high command. I believe the Zephyrian collective needs to reconsider our approach to galactic relations. Morrison smiled. Of course, War Admiral, and I'll be sending my own report to Human Colonial Command. I think our two species have a lot to learn from each other. As the two military leaders looked out at their respective fleets, both realized they were witnessing the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. The Zephyrians had learned that strength without wisdom was meaningless, while the humans had proven that true power came from knowing when not to use it. 3 months had passed since the fateful encounter between the USS Defiance and the Zephyrian fleet. The news of humanity's technological superiority had spread through alien space like wildfire, changing the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood in his ready room, reviewing reports from Human Colonial Command. The encounter with War Admiral Kethavar had triggered a diplomatic revolution that no one could have predicted. Captain, came the voice of Lieutenant Collins over the intercom, we have an incoming vessel on long-range sensors. It's transmitting Zephyrian identification codes and requesting permission to approach. Morrison smiled. He had been expecting this. Grant them safe passage, Mr. Collins, and notify the senior staff to meet in the conference room. Within minutes, Morrison's key officers had assembled around the polished table in the ship's main briefing room. Through the large windows, they could see a sleek Zephyrian vessel approaching, much more advanced than the crude warships they had encountered months earlier. Dr. Kate Williams pulled up data on her tablet. "Captain, that's the diplomatic vessel Peaceful Dawn. According to our intelligence reports, it's been specially constructed for this mission using technology the Zephyrians acquired through trade agreements with 3 other species." "Trade agreements?" asked Commander Lisa Hayes with surprise. "The Zephyrians were pure conquerors when we met them." "Not anymore," replied Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner. "Our demonstration of superior firepower combined with restraint apparently convinced their high command to try a different approach to galactic relations." Morrison nodded. "The reports from our intelligence division make interesting reading. Apparently, news of our encounter reached 12 different alien species within weeks. Several aggressive empires have suddenly become much more interested in peaceful expansion." Dr. John Miller looked up from his medical reports. "Sir, we've been receiving requests for medical technology sharing from 7 different species. Word about our healing capabilities has spread almost as fast as our military reputation." The door chimed, and Chief Security Officer Nina Walsh entered with their expected guest. War Admiral Kethvar looked different than he had 3 months ago, still massive and scarred, but carrying himself with a dignity that hadn't been there before. "War Admiral," Morrison said, standing to greet his former adversary. "Welcome back to the Defiance. I trust your journey was pleasant?" Kethvar's 4 arms moved in what the humans had learned was a Zephyrian gesture of respect. "Captain Morrison, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I bring greetings from the Zephyrian High Command and a proposal that I hope will interest you." "Please sit down," Morrison said, gesturing to the specially reinforced chair they had installed for Zephyrian visitors. "What can we do for you?" Kethvar settled his massive frame into the chair. "Captain, in the 3 months since our encounter, the Zephyrian Collective has undergone significant changes. We have established peaceful contact with 6 species that we previously considered enemies." Dr. Williams leaned forward with interest. "That's remarkable progress, War Admiral. What changed your approach?" "Your demonstration taught us that true strength comes from knowing when not to use force," Kethvar replied. "We realized that our warrior culture had been focused on conquest rather than protection." Turner studied the data on his tablet. "War Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest that your military has been restructuring itself from an offensive force to a defensive one." "Correct, Lieutenant Commander. We are transforming our fleet from conquerors to guardians. There are many species in this galaxy who need protection from pirates, slavers, and hostile empires." Morrison felt a surge of satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of outcome he had hoped for when he chose restraint over destruction 3 months ago. "War Admiral, you mentioned a proposal?" Kethvar nodded, his 4 eyes focusing intently on Morrison. "Captain, the Zephyrian Collective would like to request a formal alliance with humanity. We offer our military forces to help protect peaceful species in exchange for access to human technology and medical knowledge." The human officers exchanged glances. This was a significant development that would require approval from the highest levels of government. Commander Hayes spoke first. "War Admiral, what guarantees can you offer that Zephyrian forces won't return to their old conquering ways?" "An excellent question, Commander. We propose joint operations where human and Zephyrian forces work together. Your people would provide oversight, and advanced technology, while our warriors provide the manpower for peacekeeping operations. Dr. Miller nodded approvingly. That could work very well. Many species need protection but lack the military strength to defend themselves. Morrison considered the proposal carefully. War Admiral, I'm interested, but this decision is beyond my authority. I'll need to forward your proposal to Human Colonial Command for consideration. I understand, Captain, but I hope you will include a positive recommendation. The galaxy has become much more peaceful since word of human capabilities spread, but there are still threats that require military response. Dr. Williams pulled up a galactic map on the conference room's main screen. War Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest that several aggressive empires have been reconsidering their expansion plans since news of our encounter reached them. Yes, Doctor. The Vortak Empire has withdrawn from 3 star systems. They were planning to invade. The Crimson Brotherhood has stopped their slave raids entirely. Even the Hive Collective has sent diplomatic envoys instead of attack fleets. Morrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Zephyrian diplomatic vessel. War Admiral, I have to ask, are your people truly committed to this change, or is this just a temporary adaptation to superior force? Kethvar was quiet for a long moment before answering. Captain Morrison, my species has been warriors for 10,000 years. We thought strength meant the ability to destroy our enemies. You taught us that true strength means the ability to protect our friends. That's a profound change in philosophy. Yes, it is, and it has made us stronger than we ever were as conquerors. We now have allies where we once had only enemies or slaves. The meeting continued for another hour, covering details of the proposed alliance and the practical challenges of joint operations between 2 very different species. When Kethvar finally departed, Morrison was left with much to consider. Well, people, Morrison said to his staff, what do you think? Turner spoke first. Sir, I think it's worth trying. The Zephyrians have proven they can change, and we could use allies in this part of space. Hayes nodded agreement. The strategic benefits are significant, Captain. A Zephyrian alliance would give us access to their knowledge of local space and their contacts with other species. Dr. Williams added her perspective. From a xenological standpoint, this represents an unprecedented cultural transformation. The Zephyrians are proving that even warrior cultures can evolve beyond conquest. Morrison made his decision. I'll recommend approval to Colonial Command, but we'll need to move carefully, one step at a time, with constant oversight. As the USS Defiance resumed its patrol of human space, Morrison reflected on the changes that had begun with a simple scanning attempt by curious aliens. The galaxy was becoming a more peaceful place, not through conquest or force, but through the demonstration that power and mercy could coexist. In his captain's log, Morrison wrote, "The best victory is the one that turns enemies into friends." Today, I believe we've taken another step toward that goal. The stars looked different now, not as an endless battlefield, but as a vast neighborhood where different species could learn to live and work together. And at the center of this transformation was humanity's choice to use their overwhelming strength in service of peace rather than conquest. The galaxy would never be the same.